the chairman of the Electoral Commission, or was it Chief Justice? I get confused now. But one of the female leader, she's back in the country. He traveled to Egypt. He traveled to Saudi Arabia, came back with Ethiopian prisoners who've been languishing in those jails for a long time. When our president travels, I don't know what he brings back, but he certainly is not any valuable thing that I know of in recent times, And so we must all be very honest with ourselves and know that the importance of history is not just as an academic exercise. It's a development exercise. Let me just, I don't want to monopolize the situation. I want to say, by the way, that I'm intimidated. I don't often sit near money. Not only am I in this citadel, anyway, you say you have a foundation, I'll be talking to you later. But
I'm sure you know about the foundation.
Yes.
What the foundation does.
Yeah. Well, remember that, you people, you underestimate the arts. We had a poet here today. Your foundation, have you given anything to arts, to everything? I'll be talking to you. Okay. Oh, no, answer me.
Yeah,
answer,
exactly.
I want to hear what you have to say.
Just to say that we are sector agnostic. Our foundation will support 1,000 Africans every year. And we've supported over 7,000 young Africans from all 55 African countries, $5,000 non-refundable grant, and training, 12-week mentoring program, training plus mentoring for us. People from the art and other areas are beneficiaries. And we believe that you never can tell where the development and the upliftment of Africa will come from. And we believe strongly in people like you, in what she is doing. I like how you described Professor Jibril. It's quite interesting. And of course, Femi is doing great. And civil society too. So we support all sectors, but more importantly, it's all about
Thanks. You'll be
the
hearing
past
from me.
and also the history.
I'm satisfied. Okay.
I want to ask.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you.
La conversation va être de plus en plus importante.
The conversation will get more and more interesting.
Puisque nous devons aller au fond de l'histoire.
We have to go deep into history.
J'ai dit tout à l'heure que l'histoire est très importante.
I said earlier that history is very important.
Son enseignement est donc très important.
Teaching history is therefore very important.
À regarder de près, que fait l'Europe aujourd'hui? Elle vit son histoire, elle est elle-même son histoire, elle crée son histoire, elle dirige son histoire.
What is Europe doing today? They create their own history, they live their own history, and they expand their own history.
Chez nous, qu'est-ce qui se passe?
Here, what do we have?
Wole vient de signaler tout à l'heure que l'enseignement de l'histoire est abandonné dans certaines universités ici.
Wole Soyinka just said that the teaching of history has been abandoned in some schools.
Ce n'est pas un cas isolé, c'est un peu partout en Afrique, singulièrement en Guinée.
It's not an isolated case. It's all over the continent, especially in Guinea,
Où on enseigne surtout l'histoire des relations économiques.
where they are mainly teaching the history of economic relations.
Parce qu'il y a des possibilités pour les étudiants, après ces études-là, d'intégrer tel ou tel ministère.
Is it possible for the student after those studies to integrate history here and there?
Je vous rappelle qu'au début de l'indépendance, il y a eu ce qu'on a appelé le printemps historique, le printemps de l'histoire.
I recall that after the independence, there was something that they call the spring of history.
On était fiers de parler de l'histoire, on était fiers de vivre l'histoire.
We were proud to talk about history. We were proud to live history.
Mais petit à petit, l'Afrique s'est détachée de l'histoire et elle a été surdominée par les problèmes économiques.
But little by little, Africa is steered away from history and has been dominated by economic and other problems.
Bon, Kuti vient de rappeler tout à l'heure que tout le monde est en tenue européenne ici et nous nous disons africains.
And Kuti just mentioned that everybody is dressed as Europeans here, and we call ourselves Africans.
Par allusion, je dirais, au lendemain de l'indépendance, on était tous en boubou, on est tous en habit africain. La plupart des dirigeants.
And if I want to compare to just after the independence, we were all wearing boubou and African attires.
Il faut redevenir africain.
We have to become Africans again.
Il faut réfléchir sur ce que nous avons vécu et que nous sommes en train de vivre.
We have to think about what we went through and what we are going through.
Notre histoire, elle est lourde et triste.
Our history is heavy and sad.
Mais il faut l'assumer.
But we have to take it as it is.
Et aller de l'avant.
And move on with it.
Les transformations économiques sont importantes, mais elles ne constituent pas du tout l'essentiel.
Economic transformation is very important, but is not everything.
Mais si les sciences sociales, les sciences humaines n'ont pas une part dans la vie de notre nation et une grande part, c'est un départ qui est mauvais.
If human sciences do not have an important part in our life, that means our beginning is wrong.
Je termine en disant que l'objectif aujourd'hui, c'est quoi?
Let me finish by asking the goal today, what is it?
C'est remettre l'homme africain dans son assiette, dans son assise propre.
Is to put the African man back to where he belongs.
Et ça, ce sont des faits de tous les jours.
And that must be seen in our everyday, what we do every day.
C'est une réaction qui vient quand on regarde l'autre, on réagit en conséquence.
Is a reaction that comes when you look at your fellow African and you react as a matter of consequence.
Voilà ce que je voulais dire.
That's what I want to say.
Thank you very much, Professor Niane. I wonder, Mr. Elumelu, because the tenor of the discussion has been about what our history has been. And in fact, Professor Soyinka even said that he wondered at our inability to learn from our history. And recently at Davos, you may remember, you as an economist, you may have erased it from your mind. But a historian was asked a question, and he, about, I think it was about universal pay. And one of the panelists said, oh, when has that ever succeeded? And the historian was able to say, well, it succeeded in your country in such and such a time. And so the question is that maybe we need historians as much as we need economists. And in that context, a way of trying to avoid reinventing the wheel every time and making the same mistakes. Is there any convergence between the lessons of history and economics and the way we're looking forward to what we want to do in the future? Are there shortcuts for us if we pay attention to our history? Is there encouragement for us to be had if we pay attention to our history?
I think this conversation has been very, very interesting. Talking about the past and also the present and the future. I enjoy very much Femi's analogy. I like what Femi said about the struggle and, in my viewpoint, how the past and the struggle should help us live a better today and also a better future. 500 years of suffering, and 2019, we're still complaining. We still at times exhibit a kind of entitlement mentality. We still kind of think that we are who we are today and what we are because of other people's machinations. And I think we need to move on. I think we need to move on. When I'm in London, when I used to enter the Gatwick Express from Victoria, I'll enter the Gatwick Express from Victoria, and you go into Gatwick, you're sure in 30 minutes time you move from point A to point B. And you can almost always bank on that. And these are rail lines that have been constructed decades ago. And now fast track to modern Africa. And things are not better. So I think whilst it is good to remember our history should help prepare us for a future, help create a sense of dissatisfaction with that history, and help prepare us for a life that is better. We can't keep telling our children history of this and history of that. Let them also tell the future, and future, let them also tell a history of development, a history of economic renaissance, a history of new economic growth and development for our people. Now, as I look at today and the future, from where I sit, I see a continent that is richly endowed to create a prosperous future that will be beneficial and good for everyone. That will make all of us be proud to say we're Africans. The Jewish nation, anywhere, Jews anywhere in the world are very proud of their heritage. I believe that one of the reasons they are proud of their heritage because their heritage, or where they call the Jewish state, there's so much to show for it, and they do well in the world. We need to move into the future with optimism, leveraging all the resources that we have. We have population. We have in the other parts of the world, the workforce is dwindling, it's going down. We have a vibrant workforce. We can make it better. We can retool, recapitalize it. We can retrain it. In France last week, we had a global gathering. And two of us came from Africa, Mo Ibrahim and I. And at that gathering, we were talking about technology and the impact of technology in today's world. And everyone who spoke was speaking about their own part of the world. You know, Americans spoke about America. John Kerry led the American team. Europe, Macron led Europe. Macron and Theresa May were representing Europe. And everyone talking about their own area, continent, part of the world, what technology is doing, how to retrain. And I raised my hand and I said, you know, technology is good, but we should think about Africa, because this economy is just about starting and we need technology and that. We are talking of retraining people, or there are people who have not even used this, and we need to do and think about them. So as we talk of our history, you know, we need to think a lot more, in my viewpoint, about the kind of history our children today and children tomorrow are going to also tell. So we need to leverage our population, use our population that we have to even change the world. We were talking of dressing, you know, and I was telling myself, didn't we learn in history also about cotton in Egypt? Did we learn about the Nile, the cultivation, using water and Nile to help grow cotton and co? But what have we done with this as a people, as a continent? So I want to see a continent where things work. And Samia talked about Africans in diaspora, 1.5 billion, all of us, the true population of Africa. I want to see an African continent, or Africans are being very proud of Africa. When President Obama was president of America, he started a movement trying to get young, especially from Chicago, young Americans being able to link up with their counterparts in Africa. A few of them even came to Nigeria. They met President Jonathan. They were very excited about all of this. But the excitement dwindled. The Africans are looking, in diaspora, are looking for a place of their own. Which country in Africa is ready to prepare and present itself for that opportunity? So again, looking at Africa today, I want to see financial institutions, I want to see telecommunication company, manufacturing company, all African institutions starting from Africa and conquering the world. We've seen how company Samsung, everyone uses Samsung today. Where they came from, the whole world is using Samsung today. And as we talk about our history, we also must realize that in the corporate world, we're also gradually beginning to have African history. So when Olga was talking about, was talking about economic history, that they talk more about economic transformation, we need it, we need both. It's not a word of history versus economic transformation. We need both, and even more. We see today MTN just listed in Nigeria on the Nigerian market. This is a company that didn't start from Nigeria. We have the Dangote Group. We have United Bank for Africa. These are countries, African businesses, corporates that are also trying to make history. Starting a business, for instance, in the case of United Bank for Africa from Nigeria, today operating in 20 African countries, serving over almost 20 million customers across Africa. I never heard of. If I grew up thinking that Nigerians or Africans could never even be brand managers in their bank. The time I grew up, brand managers were foreigners, and I didn't even think Africans could be CEOs of banks. I didn't even think Africans could have significant interest in banks. So things are also changing in that area. And it's interesting to see, and this is what we say, for instance, United Bank for Africa. When we operate, we say UBA is not a Nigerian bank operating in other countries. UBA is a Pan-African bank. UBA is Africa's global bank that's operating in different African economies. We need this modern history also of economic successes of our people to be told. We need, so as we talk about the past and the past history, which unfortunately is sad history of suppression. And by the way, I like what Professor said. In fact, I'm learning sitting here because he said history is two parts, positive, negative. And it's quite true. So what I'm saying, as we talk about history, the past, let's also think of let's tell the story, the corporate story of history that's also emerged. We have African communities doing well. We have opportunities on the continent. We need to begin to change narrative and create the real story of Africa that's a land of opportunity that's also receptive to investment, so that those who have capital can come to invest in Africa, so that collectively we can build the society that will have the rails, have the infrastructure, be able to put up the kind of hospitals we need, because indeed, all we need today is no longer government building hospitals. We need government to create an enabling environment that will enable the private sector build hospitals. There are things government can do if we talk of hospital sector space that can change that sector totally. If you look at the health bill, just to say the health insurance bill alone can move people to that sector immediately. So we know what we need to do. Let historians, our elders, help us get our government to create the right policy, right environment, so that private sector will help to develop the continent. That, to me, is the new history I'd like us to write about Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to throw the discussion open to members of the audience, because I believe that you're having different visions. There's the history, which is heavy and difficult. There's the history that is being written today, and there's what will happen in the future based on how we perceive ourselves. So does anybody have...
Thank you, moderator. First of all, I'd like to congratulate UBA for supporting this program in the celebration of